All right, so there's a quote out there which was once said by Mike Tyson, which goes something like, social media has made you all far too comfortable disrespecting people and not getting punched in the face for it. Okay, so Mike Tyson, as most of you probably know, ex-heavyweight world champion, once known as the baddest man on the planet. You can probably understand why somebody like that would say something like that. And some of you might think, oh, that's quite a violent thing to say. But he's right in a lot of ways. The whole interaction on social media has made us kind of, in a way, because we don't always punch each other in the face these days, we are actually a lot more disrespectful. And there was there's a friend of mine who's a tough guy as well, ex-doorman, ex-paratrooper. I remember him saying to me one time, by the world becoming more civilized, we're actually less civilized, right? And I always remember him saying that because it was so true. And I think that is, that is how things have gone. We now interact in different ways. Maybe people are getting in less fist fights and stuff like that. And problems are settled less with fisticuffs and stuff. But has it made us better as a society? I don't think so. Now, I'm not saying we should always be punching people in the face. That's not what I'm saying at all. But because there are no consequences now, most of the time, people find it far too easy just to disrespect people, just to be nasty to people, and basically not act the same as they would if they were face to face with someone. And that's the problem a lot of the time. And we all know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. All right. Now, the reason I'm sort of saying this now is because I've just obviously got back. I do a lot of videos in my car, but that's because quite often I'm sort of thinking while I'm driving, I get home and I just want to make the video there and then. And obviously I'm on my own. So it's easier just to get the video started and off I go. But the reason I'm making the video this time is that I've just been out and about in the car, and I noticed I was stopped at some lights, and in the distance, two cars come round a corner. One car very gradually just drifted into the wrong lane, and the other car honked its horn, and and then obviously the person who got cut up kind of started speeding up, come round the side of the other person, and it was basically maybe a couple in their 50s, and the lady who was driving looked over at the other driver, stuck up her fingers and looked really aggressive, and her passenger was kind of smiling at how she had dealt with it. In other words, that showed them. And I was just like, why do people act like that? Why do people act like that? That was my initial thought as an outsider. And and a lot of us probably, and maybe people who are listening to this, have been guilty of doing the same thing, where someone cuts them up and they suddenly get mad, they see red, they pull up alongside the person, they shout out the window, or they stick their fingers up or honk their horn or whatever. And we've got to then think to ourselves, would we do that if we were able to actually talk to the person? Would we behave in the same way? All right. So driving in your car is very similar to social media, whereas, most of the time, other than people pulling you over and having a road rage incident, where things escalate, most of the time people are kind of safe to an extent in their car. And that's, again, why people behave like that. And that's why they behave like that on social media. Because, again, there's no real consequences because you just carry on driving at the end of the day. Imagine if you were in a supermarket and somebody gradually cuts you up because they're focused on something else. They're focused on their shopping, or they're focused on something completely different. They've completely not seen, or they've overlooked the fact that you're stood right next to them, and they've cut you up with their trolley. What happens in that situation? The person who gets cut up, they kind of stop or not slam on the brakes, but they kind of like, they suddenly come to a halt. The person generally maybe barges into that person. They look round and they say, oh, beg your pardon, really sorry about that. And the other person goes, no problem. No problem. There is no problem. And it's the same thing. You might think, well, you're going slower, you've got a trolley, it's not going to cause the same damage. I get that. But it's literally the same thing that has happened. One person's maybe not been concentrating quite enough and maybe focused on something different. Unintentionally, they've drifted across the other person's path. Unintentionally, they're not trying to upset the person. They're not trying to get in their way. And the other person has been halted in their tracks to an extent. And the person realizes that they made the mistake. They look around, they apologize, which is generally the normal reaction. And then the other person almost apologizes back, even though it wasn't their fault. And they say, no problem, as if that like it's just an agreement that, oh, that was a bit of a miscommunication or whatever. Whereas when we're in our cars or when we're on social media, we don't communicate like that. It's done in a completely different way, because we can't, we just don't have that kind of one-on-one interaction, real one-on-one interaction. All right, so this video really is about tolerance. Try and think about not about you being annoyed or being mad at the time. Try and think about what the other person has actually done and why they did it, and try and put yourself in their position. Have you done the same thing? Have you ever cut anyone up? Of course you have. I've cut people up. You've cut people up. You might have made a mistake even on social media and might have said something that maybe upset somebody, and you didn't realize that was unintentional, and then somebody comes on and calls you out on it. Your reaction then is to get defensive and have a go back, because again, no consequences. You can have a go back at them and be disrespectful to them, and then they're disrespectful to you, and then it all just escalates. But there's no consequences on either side. In the car, somebody pulls over, you beep at them and you stick your fingers up at them. Most of the time there's no consequences. Whereas somebody does the same thing with their trolley, or somebody accidentally lets a door slam on somebody and they're right there, that's a mistake. That they've overlooked that the fact, that the other person stood there, and then they realise, they come to or whatever, and they suddenly refocus and like, oh, really sorry about that, or you okay or whatever. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no worries. And they all move on with their day. So we need to be more tolerant. We need to act on social media or in our cars. We need to start acting more like you would if you were face to face with a person, because generally people tend to interact in a much more different manner. Imagine that the person would get out and they would punch you. Imagine that the person could sort of come around your house and do something if you disrespect them on social media. All right, so it's worth thinking about, because I think at the end of the day, people aren't generally horrible. People aren't generally like that from in a day-to-day situation. They just, for some reason, just seem to do that and act like that because they feel like they can get away with it. So we just need to start changing our thinking, be more tolerant of people, and start being more empathetic, and start being more just put yourself in their position more, and try and understand why somebody has done that, and think, would you do that, or have you done that, or was it just a mistake? And if that's the case, then sometimes you might beep somebody just to let them know that you're there. All right, I never use my horn ever in a car, never. But if I did, I would probably do it in a slightly different way. There's a beep, which kind of tells the person that you're there, or a beep beep, and there's a which is a different sound, completely different sound, you know. And the way you say things on social media, it could be, you could call somebody out, but you can call somebody out in a certain way without having to be disrespectful, without having to call them all the names under the sun. Yeah, so I'm not saying you need to shut up and not call people out, or not, you know, point out that people have made mistakes. You can still do that, but that's the way that you do it, in a respectful way. Okay, so yeah, so that was my video today. Be tolerant, and try and treat people how you'd want to be treated. It's basically the message today. All right, so I'll see you on another video. Thanks, guys. Please subscribe.